The one group for Georgia Tech that holds all the keys to the success in 2026. Today we discuss why tight end could really help this team win 10 games. All right, what's going on, everybody, man? Welcome back to another episode. Today, we're talking Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, man, on the channel, and they had a big-time presser today. So, we're going to talk about some of the big things that was discussed, man, and we're going to talk about emerging stars in this room and why this could be technically one of the best rooms for Georgia Tech this upcoming season. But before we get into that, guys, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, hype this video, and let me know more content you guys want to see. And if you want exclusive content and intel, make sure you guys obviously join and become a member, on the channel today. All right, let's go ahead and get into it and what was said today in the press conference. Today, we're discussing 5 interesting things that was discussed by obviously Nathan Brock, the tight end coach. And I love when he speaks, man, if I'm humbly honest with you guys. And the reason I do is because every time he does, you can peel some layers back and you can figure out really who he is and the type of coach that he is. So that's one of my favorite parts about Nathan Brock is just the job that he does and how he always has his group ready. And whatever he's dealt, like last year, go to Brett Seiler and Josh Beetham, right, and Harpering, right? You look at that group, Luke Harpering is what I was talking about. When you look at that group, that was more so blocking, right? A few of them went out there for pass catches, but that tight end room was more predicated around running the football, letting Haynes King do what Haynes King does, and running the ball with Malachi Hosley and obviously Jamal Haynes and those boys in the backfield. This year's a little bit different for Nathan Brock and everything that he wants to bring to the table. And the difference this year is they're more pass catchers, right? But you still have to emphasize those same things that he did before, right? Which is you still got to be able to block. You still got to be technically sound. You still have to be able to block ends and make those plays in the passing game on the perimeter. Like if there's screen plays or different things on the receivers, you still have to make plays for them and being able to block and stay on your block. But I think this is probably the best collection of talent he's had at Georgia Tech. I think for Coach Brock, big-time opportunities for him, obviously, moving forward. And I think big-time things for Georgia Tech, right? So the big thing is a whole revamped tight end room is one of the biggest takeaways. He says, interesting, at the end of last year, we had to kind of retool the entire room. And, I think it goes back to the tight end room. Yes, you play the tight end, but really within that room, all those guys have different skill sets, right? And so trying to find guys to incorporate, what they can do to help us as an offense was really what we wanted to come out of knowing the portal and bring some guys in, developing the high school guys that we have here, right? So the big thing was let's find a new platoon of guys, 3 or 4 guys that can fit into this scheme and the system of what we want to run and be different compared to the previous years, right? So obviously that was a big one. The next one I think is this one, as you guys see on the obviously thumbnail. Chris Corbo, right? And Chris Corbo was a guy suffered an injury in the spring and didn't get the chance to play. Like talked about his frustration with that throughout his press conference. But the key here was he talked about him and he was asked like, hey, who's a leader in this group, right? And I think when he said leader, like who's leading this group, who's a guy that you lean on that you think, hey, they can have a big impact. This is what he had to say. He says Chris Corbo's a guy that definitely has some of those leadership qualities. He's played a lot of football. Remember coming from Dortmund. He's an older guy. He's smart. He knows what to do. He knows where to be. It's always interesting, right? And when you have guys that transfer in, often trying to assimilate to the culture and that, Coach Key has done a good job of putting in place over the last several years. Initially, when they get here, Chris is trying to assimilate himself to the culture. Right now, we're continuing to go on and develop throughout the offseason and onto camp, and he knows the expectations, and he's starting to hold other guys accountable. That's a key piece right there. He's holding other guys accountable, right? Not just him, but the entire tight end room, right? If you're not doing something right, you're going to find out and you're going to definitely know about it. Obviously, that's the key thing there. He's also got us playing on the football. So guys in the room, they ask him questions. Hey, how do you see this? What I'm saying? He's played a lot of snaps, so he's done a really good job of, being that leader, right? Just, hey, we could throw off information, right? Young guys like who we're going to talk about here in a second, and Kevin Roche Jr., he can throw those ideas off of him and be able to feel good about, obviously, what he has to say, right? Guys like Nathan Agame, who's going to be, I think, a major factor, maybe not year one, but year two for this Georgia State team. He could throw ideas and bounce ideas off of him, right? Because after this year, you're going to lose some of these guys, right? You're going to lose the Spencer Mermans. You're going to lose, guys like Gavin Harris and things like that. You're going to need the next, set of guys to come in and play at a high level. So I think his leadership has been very important for the team. The next one is going to be Kevin Roche Jr., right? And I think for Kevin, you go back to what he had to say too, and we might pull that up. But I thought what was interesting was this offseason what he worked on, right? Which is a blocking emphasis, right? Getting more technically sound, being able to, move his feet right, right? And I think for him, taking that emphasis to also learn blocking is going to pay dividends for him, right? Because the key for him is he's going to be a major big time red zone target, right? And he's a guy, he's going to get the ball and he's going to solve a major issue for Georgia State this upcoming year by catching the ball in that red zone. Because before they had some struggles when they played NC State and lost, they had some struggles in the red zone, right? When they were trying to put away Wake Forest, they had some struggles. Now you got a guy, they'll have multiple, obviously, of course, with Isaiah Furman in there as well. But you look at Kevin Roche as a guy 6'9", tall, athletic, big, tough to cover. Savion Riley's already came out and said how tough he is to cover. And a guy that's worked on every facet of his game. Every piece of his game is only going to help him moving forward, where he's not going to come off the field. Right? You can run 12 personnel or 13 personnel, right? 3 tight end sets and different things like that. That works out in the favor. I think that's big time, moving forward, obviously, for Georgia Tech. But this is what he had to say. Kevin and I have had several conversations about that throughout camp. About just, hey, a year ago, where were you versus now? Right? It started with the physical development of getting bigger and stronger. And he's done a great job of buying into our plan for him. On the football field, it's developing him as a complete player. And if you go back and watch his high school tape, he's basically a big receiver. They line him up wide and just say, hey, go run. Because he's 6'9", they're going to throw it up to him. So he's done a great job of buying into that plan that we put in place for him. Excuse me. And it's our job as coach to put him in positions to have success. Kevin's doing great. Really happy with how Kevin's progressed through camp. And, every day just continuing to handle, install, and what we're asking him to do. So major year coming up for Kevin Roche Jr. He's been a constant throughout spring, throughout fall camp, and he's been a guy that's had a lot of attention and eyes on him to see what he's going to be able to do this upcoming season, right? I think the next big thing coming out of, obviously, tight end camp is Evan Haynes, right? Now, as reporters, we have to be very selective on what we say when it comes to spreading certain information, right? Certain things we can't say, certain things we can't. That's the reality of the situation, right? But this was a major one that he was asked about that we already kind of knew about, was him moving there. And I thought it was interesting that Evan Haynes moved to tight end because he played really well as wide receiver. But that tells me this is a room that they feel really good about if they've moved him from there. And they feel like he'll get more reps and more opportunities playing at tight end compared to wide receiver. Now, I don't know the whole rationale for it. You know what I'm saying? With him being a kind of a bigger body, having a very productive spring, but I guess they've seen something else and having to bring these new freshmen in there, the Kentrell Davis, the Coy Jean Noel, the Darnell Collins, the Jeremy Winstons, and things like that. And I think it's a situation where they felt, hey, we're kind of loaded over here, we're kind of deep over here, we're going to move you to tight end. So that's one of the major things coming out of camp. And this is what his coach had to say. He said, I think that Evan's done a good job. Obviously his background playing wide receiver, he's, being very familiar with all the formations and different pitchers. With his wide receiver background, he's somebody that can run around and catch balls and kind of add a little bit of flexibility into that position. He's working day in, day out, trying to find a role. And that's kind of what everybody's doing right now on campus, trying to find a role and earn opportunities. And, there was an opportunity for Evan to come into that room and get some more snaps that maybe he would have gotten in the wide receiver room. He's coming and handled that and is approaching it every day with a really good attitude. So I've been happy with the way Evan's come in and added value to that room. So it'll be interesting to see. I don't know what that role could be. Maybe he's a guy because he's a really good pass catcher. Maybe he's in those formations that we look at, the 12, 13 personnels in the red zone, right? Because he's another red zone target with his height, that could be alongside a Kevin Roche Jr. So that was a major development for me finding out today as well. The last one is Spencer Mermans. He's kind of that gritty, get out the mud, put his hand into the ground, hit you in the mouth, make you feel him. He's a guy, I think, that puts everything together for them, right? Because you got so many pass catchers and elite guys. He's going to be easily their best blocker. So when you're looking at those big tight end packages, bunch of tight ends on the end of the thing, you got to get some push up front, got to be able to move defensive linemen and linebackers. Spencer Mermans is the guy, to me, I feel like is going to be that major contributor and difference maker in those type of sets. Here's what was said. It says, if you watch, Spencer and kind of his background and where he came from and what he's, done in college career this far, he's a strong dude, right? He's big and he's strong. But really good, again, goes back to, trying to put all those guys and give them opportunities to go and have success in a role. I'm excited for whatever we throw at Spencer. So it's going to be interesting to see what he does. But I think he'll be a guy helps out a lot in the running game and be a guy that obviously they can depend on moving forward and things like that, man. So those are some of the interesting things I thought he said today. Talked about the red zone target for him, talked about Chris Corbo and obviously everything he had to say there. But I think this is a room, as I said early on, and it's going to be very important for Georgia Tech and their success, right? Because wide receiver, yes, we know who the players are going to be. We're still figuring out what that rotation is going to be, right? We've seen that some freshmen likely could play this upcoming season, but we know the three trio. We know Isaiah Furman, Jordan Allen, and obviously we know Dalen Pinson. But who's going to be the other three? We don't know, right? We really don't know yet. But tight end is going to be, I think, that safety blanket, that early piece that Alberto Mendoza can use as he gets into a rhythm, as he figures things out as a starting quarterback, as he goes and he's trying to lead this team to victories. I think tight end is going to be a major one. Don't be surprised if you see multiple tight ends with 400 or 500 yards this upcoming season for Georgia Tech and having a major impact, and maybe even 7 to 10 touchdown passes for a couple of them, because red zone area they struggle now with a pro style level system, 250 different variation of plays. You can go to certain guys and ask them to come down with it, and they're going to come down with the pass and make plays and do what they're supposed to do. So I think it's going to be very important. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens, but that's my thoughts. That's my analysis. I feel like this is going to be a room that really blossoms for Georgia Tech. And when we look at, okay, maybe the wide receivers are lagging behind a little bit, but we know, hey, we got a strong running game with Justice Haynes and obviously Malachi Hosey, but we also have really good tight ends as well. It's going to be that bridge as the wide receivers continue to figure it out offensively, and we try to figure out this thing all together. So it's going to be very intriguing to see what happens, but I can't wait. It will be a lot of fun, to see these tight end room blossom and some of these young guys get a lot of reps and really take over and really make some big time plays this upcoming season. But as we do it for today's video, appreciate everybody tuning in. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe, have this video, and I will see you guys in the next one. And remember, as always, peace and blessings.